You are listening to Anna Letitia Cook at Women Up Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Women Up Radio. This evening's guest is Marie Hale. She's the CEO of @Revenue and of Fwd Revolution. This evening, we're going to be talking about one of her main interests, which is what women really want. Is it revolution or evolution? So welcome to the show, Marie.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, it's lovely to see you again. I know we had a chat before, but we never had a chance to go through everything. So can you tell us, I know your company specialize very much in marketing and sales, and particularly in people, but also you're really dedicated to the fight against the female recession. Now, that's something we've heard a little bit about, but not everyone knows what it is. So can you explain a bit more about what it really is?
Oh, absolutely. So what had happened was when we hit the pandemic, people went back to gender normative roles, which at this point we know that roles should not have gender associated with them, but they did. And in the first year of the pandemic, we lost 2.4 million women in the workforce, just in the States alone.
Oh, really?
Just in the States alone.
That's huge.
These were women that had spent 20 years doing what they had been told to do. And when push came to shove, they were told they were disposable. Many of them had to make decisions to step back because, of course, their husbands earned a little bit more than they did.
Yeah.
And if they happened to have made a human or two, first of all, they were about to spend way more time with them than they ever anticipated and probably regretted some of those decisions. But they had to completely restructure their lives. And as we went through the phases of, oh, wait a minute, we can work from home, which I don't know why that was such a novel idea, but I'm glad we finally got through. We saw organizations putting more pressure on the women workers that were at home than on their male counterparts. They were now required to work 50, 60 hours a week and somehow pretend there were not children existing in that home with them.
Yeah.
Which I don't know about you, but if you try to get a 7-year-old who is going through homeschooling to not ask you questions during a call,
oh, I know.
Think about what that does to the child. They're sitting there seeing you and they can't access you, but they need you.
Yeah.
And so on top of being pushed out of their careers, or as it's often referred to, pink tracked, now they're dealing with the psychological and emotional impacts of losing their identity, having to completely restructure how their relationship with their children to be teacher and mother and butler and every other thing our kids wanted us to do at that point. And let me tell you, like, I'm not a Barbies and arts and crafts kind of mom. So I helped my daughter start a business, but we were not jamming on the same wavelengths, to be sure. And what we saw as we started to come out of that is not only were we dealing with very intense mental, social, and emotional impacts on the female workforce, but for every 6 months that a woman is out of work, she loses 5 years of seniority. 5 years of seniority. The female recession will have a $4.5 trillion impact on the GDP in 5 years just due to loss of talent.
Seriously?
Just due to loss of talent.
Good God.
Yeah, it turns out we're kind of badass, even though we're still not getting paid as much as we should be.
Yeah.
So now companies are grappling with having to pay the men that they hired to take our places, which were generally less qualified and more paid.
Yep.
Now they're out more money. They're getting less results. And things keep sliding and sliding and sliding. And as we're now 2+ years into this beautiful experience, we're seeing not only another wave of massive burnout, because we've all just been in such survival mode. But we're seeing that the concept, and I still giggle because I'll tell you that I came to the concept for Fwd Revolution during what could have only been a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Right. And I put together the nonprofit in about 3 months because I knew we needed to support one another. And I knew that my vision was on the right track. My gut told me to keep going. And in January, when we officially launched of 2021, and I was out there talking to sponsors and trying to refine my message, because at first it was just babble. Luckily, I've got good business girlfriends that will tell me to go take a shot of tequila, come back and try and explain again what I was saying. But I was explaining to them that, I don't think Karen is going to want to go back and work for the first Todd that walked past, that is now in her seat making more money than she did. And she's going to have to do her job and his job.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to work, guys. And now I just have an I told you so GIF that I send out to people as we've gone through the shock of the great resignation.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's like, well, no, duh. Who wants to go back to a broken patriarchy?
Yeah.
We've set the system up in such a ridiculous way when you're there to make money to take care of your family or to create the kind of life that you want to see. But you can't have that life or family because of the parameters within which you have to work.
Yeah.
Who thought this was going to last forever?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And so now that we're seeing all of this crumbling, companies are literally just scurrying to figure out what to do. How do we get back our talent?
Yep.
How do we, for small businesses, how do they attract and retain talent? Because we can't offer the big benefits, right?
Yep.
But more importantly, people have such different needs now because we've been shown that our needs matter.
Yes.
Now you have a completely different psychology to deal with, along with a bunch of people that are not really willing to come back and work for less. And do more. And
understandably. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And have you found with that and with the female recession and with the feeling that people have got now and the experience of the couple of years of everything being completely different, what ideas are there or what feeling is there about counteracting it, but in a positive way, so that women are getting back to what they want and not necessarily what was there before, but what their ideas are, what their new learned habits are?
So there's a few things that we're seeing. We're seeing a great surge towards entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
We are in a market where fractional and freelance work is becoming more widely accepted. It's not all the way there yet. And we're seeing that families have been forced to learn to live on less. So while there is still a need for many families to have dual incomes, those that don't necessarily need it may be opting out completely.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we're seeing people that are just simply so broken by the experience that they've closed down their small businesses and they've just gone to freelancing because it's so exhausting to be out there trying to dig up business and can get things going constantly. Or the amount of work has increased so much to get the same results.
Yes.
That and it's funny because this really a lot of this happened towards like January of this year, where people just seemed to start breaking down in much larger numbers and just saying, I'm opting out completely. I'm going to move wherever I want. I'm going to change my lifestyle. And if that means that I have to give up my creature comforts, then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's some of us that can't give up our creature comforts because our creatures are the humans that we created.
Yes.
And they still want crap like Oculuses.
Yeah.
So it's this constant pull and stretch, mostly on the females of the family, or the one who is playing the mothering role, because not only are they carrying the burden of all of the financial loss and restructuring and having to care for the family under new parameters, but they carry most of the emotional burden and responsibility in the relationships as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it has been, we've seen a great shift towards people either completely giving up and just saying, forget it, I'm out of this stupid experience, or I'm going to get out there and create something wild and wonderful and new.
Yeah.
Because you fools have been messing it up for years.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, I know you talk about the difference. I mean, this is moving on more to the women's equality and what women want and things like that. I mean, I want to come back later to the stress and the problems, because I think women are also developing a lot of resilience. But with revolution and evolution, it was definitely a revolution, particularly when I was younger, because I'm a lot older than quite a few people who are going to be listening to this. But, you know, when my generation, it was revolution, we are equal, we can do this, we're going to, you know, banging the drum. Do you think now it's that, or is it more evolution? Because I know you talk a lot about the difference. So how do you see it now? I think different countries are at different stages. So
100%.
Part of Europe is going to be a lot slower than America, because America normally is more in advance on things like that. So how do you see it now?
So I think it does vary tremendously based on culture. One of our partners is an Irish-based organization. And as they were looking to pull in some of our resources, they said, oh, well, we're in a different phase. We're still in the men getting used to having women in the workplace phase.
Oh, shit.
Yes, I said, oh, shit, as well.
Seriously?
I was like, oh, God, okay. All right, if that's where we are, let's fix that real quick. Luckily, they're smart and they're bringing in a lot of American female executives. Help sort that thing out. I don't know if they're going to fix all of Ireland, but it's a start. But I think we almost dance on the knife's edge most of the time. During the first revolution and the suffragette movement and all of those things, we had to fight to change laws to be able to be independent. When you can't have a checking account without a man's name on it, exactly, you don't have a choice but to force revolution. Right? As we have been doing research within our own organization, what we have come to learn, which was a complete shock to me, and I still get a little verklempt, is that a lot of the women that are in the end of Gen Y millennial range do not resonate with being discriminated against at all in the workplace. It doesn't even dawn on them. And the folks that we were talking to were of a fairly broad age range. I want to say like 25 to 35, 40. Very different backgrounds, socioeconomic and racial. And not one of them felt like they'd ever been discriminated against.
Really?
And this was so upsetting to my team. This was so upsetting to learn this. And the next day, somebody gave me a quote and they said, misogyny isn't the shark in the water. It's the fucking water. And they were right.
Yeah.
We've become so used to things that I think the piece that is needed to bridge between revolution and evolution is that we have to remember that the women before us fought for the opportunity to have equality.
Yep.
If we don't demand equality, we are negating their efforts.
Yep.
So in that spectrum, we have to be revolutionary.
Yes.
Where we get to be evolutionary is as we are learning new processes and gaining insights into what is truly impactful in the feminine experience. What we're real good at is sharing stories.
Yes.
And as we share those stories, we begin to evolve the collective experience. Yes. And as we begin to really focus on not one of the big misnomers about feminism is that it's just about women. But feminism is truly about all of us together, not pushing men out, not pushing other out, but coming together as a collective.
Yes.
And when you view feminism through that lens, aligning with our male allies, aligning with those that are truly going to show up and providing them with that evolutionary mindset.
Yep.
Is really where we get to start to move forward. So I would, if I was to cut it real dry, I would say those of us that are on that are the older millennials, that I was born in 79. I still hold on to being a 70s baby, even though I got it by 3 months, you know. We are really the ones that are having to be revolutionary in our approach. And those younger generations that have not experienced or are not emotionally connected to what happened before them, they are the evolution. And it is our influence and impact and mentorship of those other women and allies that is going to make the bigger difference. We simply have two separate roles. It's the old broads and the young broads. It's fine.
I know there's, because I'm 20 years older than you, because I was born in 59. And I did an interview with a lady who's become a friend, and she's now 75, 76, something, you know, so she's another 15 years older than me. And she was a film producer in Canada and for documentaries and dramas, and in New Zealand, because she's originally New Zealand. And we were talking a lot about feminism, women's equality, etc. And we were saying we didn't actually find it that difficult, particularly her, because the suffragettes had happened, but then her age group and then mine were the first that really tried to get into equality at work. And one of her ideas is, because men didn't expect it, there was no fight, because we just went in, and it was afterwards that they were like, oh, we don't want this. And afterwards they got more defensive. So in fact, for her age group and mine, overall, I mean, this is definitely a generalization, it was easier, but then it was more difficult for our children, because everything had changed and had got more closed. And now the whole fight has to start again, because men have to be re-educated, is a strong word, but they have to see the difference. They have to see the positives. And I'm very much into positive action rather than being militant and aggressive and, you know, screaming and shouting, because I think doing things by cooperation and learning and development and mutually supporting each other, you get less fighting, you get more positive interaction. So trying to encourage them to understand how having women with them, there are definite positives, how they can complement each other. But there's still the revolution aspect of they've got to understand it and see it to see why it is a benefit and then what they can do to make it all happen.
Well, and I think there is value to shining light on the gross injustice. We've lost 40 years of equality in the past 2 years. 40 years.
Yeah.
That should break your heart. If it doesn't stir you, then you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of value in some of the movement that we've been seeing in our allies, where they are standing up and saying, wait a minute, if you're not going to give her the same pay that you give me, you don't get to have me either.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. And I think as allies and as just even other women, when you see someone that is not possibly able to stand up for themselves or is standing up for themselves and is not being heard, it is our responsibility to say, wait a minute, she was speaking. Please let her finish.
Yes.
Or she deserves the same kind of raise that I got.
Yeah.
We do talk about numbers. Help me understand why she's less valuable than I am.
Yes.
And it's terrifying because we don't want to jeopardize our own position. But at the same time, if we continue to only protect ourselves, and it doesn't have to be confrontational, but if we continue to let those things happen, then when it's our turn next, we deserve whatever came down that pipeline.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that's the part of the feminist movement that kind of got lost in its translation between generations.
Yes.
Mentoring right now is one of the most powerful things you can do for the women in your life.
Yep.
Not only do they need folks that have walked through the fire to know that they are not alone and they are not other, but they need those people that can shine the light on some of that inequality and say, nope, I know it's always been this way for you, but this is what true equality looks like.
Yeah.
And equality is equity. It brings everybody up.
Yes.
And that's the positivity that we pull in and can exemplify.
Yes. Yeah. And also, when you've got real equality, you can use the strengths, because men and women are different. It doesn't mean that because you're one, you're superior, but you can use each other's strengths and talents to help everybody move forward. So when they start really working to that, again, with, as you say, equality of pay, equality of opportunity, things like that, really incredible things can happen. And it can make such a difference. Whether you're in a very large organization, whether you're an entrepreneur, it just changes the whole atmosphere. It changes the whole way of working, the whole dynamic, and it just becomes so much stronger.
And I would push that a little bit further and say it's not just male to female. It is truly a diversity issue.
Yeah.
You need to, if your entire workforce looks like you haven't scratched the surface of innovation.
Yeah.
And when you've got folks that are not only of different backgrounds, but even breaking down into what's become another significant part of the recession, which is the degree recession.
Yeah.
Where I heard a study that said that something like 17% of white collar jobs in California are held by Hispanic people, but 70% of the populace is Hispanic.
Really?
Now, why is that? It's because they want a degree for every job. You don't need a degree for every job.
No.
I got my MBA on the streets.
Yeah.
I started a business at 22. Yeah. And I kept out there educating myself through non-traditional methodologies because, if I had graduated with a degree in marketing, it would have been useless by the time I put my cap on.
Yes. Exactly. You've got to move.
So breaking down those barriers of socioeconomic backgrounds and race backgrounds and gender backgrounds and orientation backgrounds and disability backgrounds opens up such possibility. One of the things that we've seen Amazon do a phenomenal job of, and not that I'm a huge Amazon fan, but I think Amazon and Google both have programs that specifically employ those with neurodiversities and leverage those neurodiversities to be able to come up with ideas that are so completely out of the box because this person's brain works like no other person's brain. There is such beauty in that. And in that space is where we begin to create a tapestry of what the human intellect and effort can truly achieve when it's pulled together.
Yes. Yep. I know, I agree with that. That makes such a difference. Also, something I think, which is because of my age, I think very much with all diversity inclusion, with all equality, some countries, again, have very different ideas on different ages and different ages working. And it can be, like you mentioned about degrees, somebody who's very young and just starting work and they don't have a big degree, they don't have a lot of studies, they can have so much energy, so many creative ideas, so much dedication that even if they're only 16 or 17, they can bring so much to the office, to the workforce, or to the boardroom table if you let them. And again, older people, which in Europe, some countries in Europe tend to be rather anti-older people, but yet someone who's 70, 75, even older, they've seen everything. They've seen the crises, they've seen the problems, they've seen the solutions. And because they've experienced all the negative challenges, they're calm. They don't panic as much. They don't stress as much. And not only can they just calm the atmosphere, but they can pass on their knowledge and experience to the younger ones. So you can get such a different perspective when you put all of them together in a melting pot. You can just get amazing results coming out of it.
Yeah, but you've got to be willing to listen.
Yeah, exactly. But I know, because we're practically out of time already, I can't believe it. I know we were talking about the female recession, and you explained the problems, the challenges, how very bad it's been, how so many people have lost things. But I know in a previous conversation as well, we've talked about how opportunities have opened up. So it's been very negative on one side, but also there have been new pathways, new aspects of creativity. And even as you said earlier about people thinking, I don't want that, I'm going to do something on my own. So what are these new opportunities and all the different aspects they can take? And how can we foster that so that women can really progress and they can open up new opportunities to perhaps replace the issues and the defeat? Well, I mean, I don't like using negative words, but it's the reality.
It was a broken patriarchal system that we were all handed, and we had to march.
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, wait a minute. The patriarchy wasn't great. And it works without that. So maybe we've got some ideas.
Yeah.
So really where we're seeing innovation is there are organizations that are coming through. Some of them are for-profit, some of them are nonprofit. I decided to start mine as a nonprofit, but that are truly focused on completely rethinking how we value those who work with us.
Yep.
And I say with us and not for us, sitting as a CEO and a seasoned entrepreneur, because one, I know that every day that somebody shows up for my dream, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Like that is just number one. But as we start to have to care for people more holistically, there has been tremendous innovation. And there's been a lot of partnerships that are being created because of sheer necessity, right? It is a lot easier to lift as we climb than it is to throw other people off the mountain as we're trying to get to the top. And so there is a huge movement in the fractional work environment. Fractional work allows people to work when they want, typically how they want, and dictate how that works in their life. So we're creating life-work balance as opposed to work-life balance. You're seeing these movements happen within recruitment firms that are placing freelancers within. It hasn't hit Fortune 500 yet, but people are becoming much more open to using fractional talent and paying for it well, because typically they show up knowing what needs to be done.
Yes.
And we're also seeing a greater trend towards project-based payments as opposed to paying you for the hours that your butt is in the seat.
Yeah.
That is great. Even when I was in my early 20s, I had a clause in my contract that said something along the lines of, there will be no financial penalty for projects completed in less time than initially anticipated. Yeah. Awesomeness is rewarded.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Let's get it out. As I get better at this, you're not paying me less.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy, but that's how we had set up the system.
Yeah.
Let's see how long you can take up space in the office. What good does that do anyone? So to support those kinds of initiatives, one, when you see a opportunity to support a woman that is entrepreneurial and that is really out there impacting change, help her connect to grants, help her connect to funding. Women still start businesses on their credit cards at an alarming rate. Yeah. This is unstable and is absolutely dangerous to the future of their organization. Make sure that you're hiring from these women-led businesses. It seems like such a small thing, but when you look at how most contracts are awarded, especially in the larger corporations, or even if you're a small business and you need someone to do your bookkeeping, make sure that person does not look like you. Make sure that you are fostering diversity in every experience that you have.
Yep.
And lastly, make human connections. We are no longer a transactional world.
Yeah.
And we had been so transactional for so long. The companies that survived had true relationships with the people that they served. Make time in your life, in your work life, to develop relationships with those that are at your station of life and those that are moving in your direction. Because they are going to be the future when you don't want to run that business anymore. When you are 75 and you feel like retiring or going into a different industry to bring that spark.
Yeah.
Generations typically are left with what the previous generation thought was the best thing.
Yeah.
And then we hold it against them when they can't figure it out. If we can look at this next round as how can I help this generation maintain its diversity and bridge where they are and what we thought was going to work that maybe wasn't such a great thing to hand down, we're going to reduce the gaps in so many things, from equal pay to equal housing to making sure that laws are set up to support every part of society.
Yeah.
That is true evolution.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Marie. That's absolutely brilliant. Can I ask you one last thing, if people want to get in touch with you, because everything you said, it's so interesting, and we haven't had time to go through the minutest part of it. We've really just covered one or two very brief points. So I'm sure they're going to want to read more, hear more, understand more. How can they get in touch with you, or where can they see, your ideas, your media, etc.?
So our nonprofit is Fwd Revolution.com, and our sales and marketing collaborative, which employs mostly revolutionaries, is atrevenue.com. And from there, honey, you can find me anywhere.
Brilliant. That's lovely. Marie, thank you so much for appearing on the show. I hope you'll come back another day, because we have so much more to talk about. It's brilliant. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Let's change the world.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for watching and for listening to Marie Hale. You've heard where you can contact her. You'll also find it on the page, along with all the links, so that you can get everything easily. Do tune in again next week and see some more fabulous guests, but really go on to Marie's website, find out the information, because it is amazing what she's doing. Thank you very much. See you all soon. Bye.